Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Event Industry News Podcast with me, James Dickson. Wishing you all a very good morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever or wherever you join us from today. And on today's podcast, talking all things photography, videography, media, and I guess in an age where everybody carries the capacity to record 4K video and take good quality photos around in their pockets. The question, I suppose, that we're asking today is, where do photographers and videography and photography sit in today's event marketplace and landscape? And no better person to talk about it on today's podcast than my guest, who's joining me from the USA today. Vincent Roazzi Jr. is the founder of Big Event Media, and I'm delighted to say, after many emails backwards and forwards to set up the recording and get a time that works for us both and his busy schedule around the world, Vincent joins us today. Vincent, a very warm welcome to the Event Industry News Podcast.
Thank you, James. Appreciate the introduction. Awesome
No,
to be here.
no problem at all. Yeah, and there's been emails flying backwards and forwards. I think when we first emailed in January to try and set this up, you were going to Japan for something. I guess backwards and forwards across, the various different locations in the USA where you will work. Where are you joining us from today?
So I'm in my office in Austin, Texas. That's
Beautiful.
where I call home. But yeah, we travel probably every other week right now. And, I get a few days back home to relax, recharge, and then gear up for another massive conference or trade show.
Excellent. But before we sort of dive into the nitty gritty of today's conversation and talking about photography, videography at events, what it means now for people, how that manifests itself in 2025, give us a little bit of professional background about yourself and how that led to the formation of Big Event Media.
Sure. So I've been doing photography and video for 10 years. I'm 40 now. I started around 30. That's when I first picked up a camera. So I was working in a sales job in New York. I also moved to Miami and basically doing, account management, business development jobs, and staring at my computer screen and thinking, looking at like a tropical background and like as my wallpaper and wondering, like, what am I doing with my life? So I think I picked up a camera out of a necessity for creativity and expression. And, that started in New York. Me and my best friend would just walk around New York City with a camera. And, I was so fascinated by the cultures of New York, the different neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And, I found myself exploring places that I never went to before. And it was just because I had a camera, or you meet strangers. So, that's how I picked up the camera.
How soon after that did you decide that this is something that you might like to pursue professionally and decide that event photography and videography was maybe the route to go down?
Yeah, so it took a few years. Yeah, I was doing it as a hobby and never thought it would be something that would lead to a career. I just loved it. I was truly passionate about it. Started doing concerts pretty much immediately. And I think a lot of event photographers and videographers start out with, music or travel because, where you get free concert tickets in exchange for photos. I mean, there's like no better exchange. So that's how I started, almost immediately in events and covering concerts for a company called Sofar Sounds, which I actually started out of London. And they were, basically like secret concerts in houses and warehouses or, coffee shop. And you'd get, a special invitation, and I was the photographer. So it was a lot of fun. But, never thought it would be a career. I was that same person that I would go out with in New York doing photos. He went to Bhutan to start a travel company.
Wow.
And I don't know if you know where that is.
Sure, it's Southeast Asia, isn't it? Bhutan?
No, actually, it's in the Himalayas.
Oh, of course, yeah, Himalayas, yeah.
Small country, sandwiched between India and China.
Sure.
He's there, for a year, and one day calls me up and he says, I have a 2-week visa, or I have a 1-year visa for you to come to Bhutan. And I want you to do the photography for my travel company and help me launch it.
Wow.
Yeah. Um, so, I'm sitting in my desk, actually in the lobby of like this Miami, uh, luxury Miami office building. Everything there is really, perfect and pretty. And he's like on a Skype call trying to like get through a terrible Wi-Fi connection. Saying, you got to be here. Would love for you to be here, but you have to be here in 2 weeks. And I'm thinking, uh, okay, so quit my job, tell my parents, you
Pack
know,
up.
and buy the one-way flight and maybe a couple new camera lenses.
Jeez.
So it
I
was
mean,
that was
that's a brutal introduction, and I guess
yeah.
one of the first things that kind of springs to mind is, or to ask you, is a lot of professional photographers that I've encountered in the events industry over the years. They've been doing it for years and years. They've been doing it probably since they were a teenager. They might have studied it in school. They might have gone on to college to study photography, or maybe design or
Yeah.
art, or something that encompasses the use of photography, and they know all the, I guess, the theoretical background and the
Mm,
actual technical information. Coming into it at what would be considered to be, I guess, a late age for anybody picking up something and then going into it professionally.
yeah.
Do you find that you approach it in a different way to other photographers that you've encountered who maybe have that kind of college and educated background in photography?
Absolutely. And everyone on our team at Big Event Media is this scrappy sort of run and gun, self-taught freelance nomad who,
Great.
we all have, these backgrounds in travel and concerts. And and I love that. I love the entrepreneurship. I love the freelance mentality. And people that have taught themselves, we don't have, some of us don't have the technical knowledge that you would
Mm,
get from a degree or education.
yeah.
And I still don't know, how the camera actually works. I definitely understand how to use it, but sometimes there are things that I'm very aware I don't understand compared to someone that's very educated about it. But it makes us very scrappy. Um, there are people on our team that are very technically proficient, and they teach me, things about my camera. Um, but yeah, I think it's very different, and there was a big boom of freelance photographers and videographers that came out of the DSLR uh, generation, is what I
Sure.
like to call it.
Yeah.
Cameras all of a sudden became really easy to use, and you could get, just like now on an iPhone, 4K footage, or
Yeah.
everyone's a photographer in my opinion,
Yeah.
and some
Yeah.
people take it too far, like me. And
Yeah. And do you, I mean, when it comes to events, I guess regardless of what tools you're using, a good photo is a good photo. If the content and what's held within it is, I guess, telling a story or capturing a
Mhm.
moment in time. And it does it make it in the modern age, does it make it harder to make your photos, as the person who's booked as the professional official photographer in an event, to stand out above the crowd when you might have thousands of people there snapping photos away on their phones?
Right.
Does it make it more difficult for you? Are you constantly looking for maybe a different angle, a different way of taking a photo that you think the guys in the audience are not going to be able to get with their phones?
Yeah, there's two ways to look at this. One is to be super negative and say, oh, what's my value? Everyone can everyone's getting in my shot now, or someone opts for just iPhone photography.
Mhm.
But and even social, sometimes, like in the wedding industry, for example, there are now social videographers that are getting hired instead of the professional cinematographer or videographer
Yeah,
with the
sure.
high-end gear.
Yeah.
So, but in my opinion, the result is everyone is more educated about photography.
Mhm.
So everyone understands composition and know lost me for a sec. It kind of educates the people, the general public,
Sure.
and their level of their standards increase.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
people look for higher quality photography, better photography, and with experience, yeah, we attack every angle and emotion as event photographers or videographers. So we are, that iPhone might just be capturing us from the seat or the back of the room.
Mhm.
There are quality things that we definitely do better with more expensive cameras and editing, but the if it was iPhone versus iPhone, pro photographer versus general public, we would have angles from the ceiling. We would be behind the stage as a celebrity guest walks onto the stage.
Mhm.
We call it the walk up shot, and the lights are
Sure,
coming
yeah.
from behind. This is how we compete against the iPhones.
Sure, yeah, yeah.
You're at the end of the day, yeah, we do have to be very creative with what's in front of us, no matter what device we're using.
And has it, I mean, you've worked in it for 10 years now. And particularly I'm thinking of Instagram as a social platform and how that's developed in the last decade. Are you briefed more and more now by clients that you're working for at their events to capture footage that cannot be used, I guess, in the traditional sense on things like websites or marketing, materials for their next event, but also for social media use as well? And does that change the angles, the equipment that you're using? Is that very much a consideration now in the briefs that you receive?
Yeah, absolutely. We just did a Billy on the Street concept. Uh, do you know Billy on the Street?
No,
He's
educate
a
me.
wild guy in New York, and he's just running up to people on the street. He's a comedian, but
Okay.
his whole thing is just like street interviews, and they're like really fast, 10 seconds, and he's just running around doing these. It's hilarious. He has an entire show just for him, and it's actually I think it's trending now as well on social. But we took basically that concept into the conference world instead of the pretty boring man on the street interview that we're all used to.
Yeah.
Social is where you can be more fun, and obviously there's demand. I mean, like it's I think almost annoying at first for a lot of professional photographers, videographers, that people might want social content
Mhm.
in the first couple years because there's a lot of pride in the work that we're doing. But now we've kind of made it something really fun. So for social, it's where you can kind of express personality and humor. Instagram especially, and even on LinkedIn, we're starting to see uh, companies be like a little bit more loose with what they put out there.
Mm. Yeah.
So we're developing concepts like that, and it's a blast. I mean, it's actually making it a lot more fun, and it's just something that's expected at this point. It's like, okay, we're gonna make your highlight video very high end, highly produced, and your photos. But what about the like 20, not 20, 20 is a lot. What about the 3 reels per day?
Sure.
You know,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
um, because it's it's very powerful. I mean, it's we use it as well. This for our social media, just like very low quality iPhone,
Yeah.
just to showcase our humor and our personality.
And I guess that when I look at it more and more, the editing process as well has been shaped by the advent of particular social media platforms. And again, I'll use Instagram, but then we've got TikTok as well, and the way that people consume the media, but the way that people are happy to view media now, particularly videos. The editing process is something that strikes me has changed significantly in terms of the speed that you can edit, but also the rapidity of the cuts that are in a particular edit. You take a 1 minute reel on Instagram, a food reviewer, there could be 80 cuts in the course of that video and different shots that make it in there. And it's something, as somebody, I'm not a photographer, I'm not a videographer, but it's something that I've noticed. So I guess as somebody who works at the pro end of things, you must undoubtedly be shaped by that kind of example.
Okay, I love that you said that, because that just kind of proves the education of the general public. You say you're not a professional, but the fact that you're telling me about cuts and edits and how fast the transitions are and all this, that's evolving so quickly. I mean,
Mm.
like we can process 80 flashes of images as video now, and that's just like a one swipe, you know.
Yeah,
A-
yeah.
and that's so I think it definitely creates an evolution of the edit,
Mm.
and how fast um the cuts need to be,
Hmm.
how
Sure.
fast the content needs to come out, which is like yesterday. Everything
Yeah,
needs to be,
yeah.
you know,
I need
it
it
used
5 minutes ago.
oh my god. It's changed so much even the last year. It used to be 1 week, 2 week delivery, which still is the standard for, your highlight videos. Now we do regularly overnight edits. We have an editor on site
Sure.
editing till 6 in the morning.
Yeah.
Client comes in, reviews the edit, it goes out on social, and it's like a highly, highly produced video. Um, I didn't even think that was possible, that I would be able to do that a year ago, but with the right team members and talent, it's just like, wow, I can't believe we're able to do this.
Mm.
And then within that edit, you'll have something, I call it a match cut. Well, everyone calls it a match cut. Basically, you line up something like a logo,
Mhm.
and you shoot it, all the logos in the same exact frame, so that you can flash it 20 times, 25 times. Let's say that's 1 second of video. And you see 25 logos in a split second. And all that does is gain someone's attention before they swipe.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So you have all these tricks for edits and cuts just so they don't swipe. And at the same time, you have to deliver meaningful content where people are say, "Oh, I want to attend this event," not just a bunch of fast, fancy tricks. You know?
Sure. And I guess that having the hardware that you've now got at your disposal, the toolbox that you'll carry with you into an event must, in many respects, make it easier to be reactive as well to good content that if you're observing an event, there will be instances and stuff where you can quickly just grab a device, be it a camera, a video camera, a good quality phone, anything, and just think that that's going to make some great content over there. And when when I think about, I've been married 20 years this year, and I remember that our wedding photographer shot on
Yeah,
film. He shot on
yeah.
old school film, so every shot had to be calculated, very carefully crafted, because once he pushed that button, it was committed to the film. And then it
Yep.
was, like then a month later, we saw some photos, and I just think now that, is it a good or a bad thing that because of the digitization of that process, you could basically capture as much as you want, as quick as you want, and then go through it all afterwards and see what's good and bad? Has it taken some of the craft out of a shot?
Yeah, a good example I have for this is I used to shoot in manual only because I had no idea when I first started how to use autofocus, which is like a massive
Yeah,
time saver. So I
yeah.
went through that whole year in Bhutan doing manual focus. Yeah, and I would take so much time to, like you'd have a monk uh getting ready for a festival inside a temple. And I'd spend the first minute just with this with the monk focusing on his eye perfectly with like a 1.4 aperture lens so that the sharpness of the eye was perfect.
Sure.
And then I'm just sitting with him, really slowly taking in the perfect shot. And there's something about slowing down and being intentional about what you're shooting uh, that does result in a more powerful shot, however, less shots.
Sure. Yeah,
So
yeah.
it depends like what we're going for. If I'm just going for that one perfect image, uh, yeah, I need to take my time. But speed, we we have two cameras instead of one. That we're shooting a wide angle shot and then a tight shot. Um, just the way we compensate for it is more people so that they can focus on what they do best. So
Mm.
our lead photographer, incredible guy from Australia, um, he only focuses on the photography and getting that perfect shot and he'll do the tight shots where it's just like right on the speaker, really tight. And then we have another person doing the wide angle shots, people shots, so that we can compensate for that because yeah, we have to do a lot and we have to be intentional. And once you lose that, you miss so many good shots. Getting people to smile in the right moment when they're talking on stage. And if you look at our portfolio, we have a lot of them. Every single subject, we get it. But one person is just focused on that, getting the smile. it's,
I
it's
mean,
amazing.
I mean, I've worked with a lot of conference speakers and event speakers in various different guises and events. Getting them to smile full stop when they're stood on stage at a lectern it can be a challenge sometimes. So, if you've got a 90-minute keynote, you may only get that one opportunity to get that smile, to get that shot.
Yeah, sometimes the best actually photos of for stage speakers is before they get on or afterwards, and you just tell them to
Yeah.
pose and smile as they look out into the crowd. That's
Smile and
way
wave.
better.
Smile and wave, boys. Smile and wave.
Yeah.
The team aspect of it is something that I'm curious about because again, when I started working in events, you okay, have we booked a photographer? Have we booked an official photographer to come to the awards or to the conference or whatever it was? And you would have, one person going around with a couple of cameras on their shoulders, snapping away. You've several times in today's podcast, you've referenced the team of people that you're working with. Is it pretty much de rigueur now that you will be contracted to provide a team of videographers and photographers to a particular event now? And is that almost like a standard practice for you?
We do both. I mean, it depends on the size of the conference. There are even situations now that we have one person doing both photo and video.
Yep.
Um, and that's really to help our clients save money instead of hiring two people from our team or one photo, one video.
Mm.
So we will go as low as one person doing the job of two.
Yeah.
But we have so many overlapping conferences that those different team members will go out to do the different conferences. And then but for the larger ones, 12,000 people conference, we will definitely have the full team and our core team is two photographers, two videographers, one on-site editor, and then one person dedicated to just the social media, Billy on the street or whatever fun social media they want to do, just
Yeah.
for that, just for the social. Um, so yeah, we'll do the bigger team if it calls for it. Those are the most fun for sure. Is
Sure.
we're
Yeah.
all there 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. and then all over again. The editor's like overnight and just we see him in the morning, say hi,
Yeah.
give him breakfast.
And that collaborative approach, I guess, is I mean, indicative of many events now in terms of teams of people and particularly when I think about events teams made up of freelancers, the way that you've described your own team today early on, that they've all got their own attributes. It sounds like you said, that they're self-taught. It almost sort of sounds like a hit squad that you've got, like the ninjas of photography. These guys have kind of learned, like computer hackers. With their own sort of way of doing things. And I guess, as I said, going back to what I said at the very start about photography being so accessible to people now because of the devices that we carry, is that would inevitably, in some respects, lead to a reshaping of the traditional parameters of what was right, what the rules are. And there are no
Mm.
rules anymore, are there? A good photo is a good photo, a good video is a good video. There are so many different ways to deploy content that the rule book, in some respects, must be getting thrown out the window.
Yeah, I've thought about this a lot, and I wonder. I mean, you could tell me, because I've only really specialized in the conference industry. I've been doing conferences for 10 years. The reason why I started Big Event Media was because the event industry treated me so well, and it was the most consistent work, and I had
Mm,
to eventually specialize
sure.
um, if I was going to take this as a serious career.
Mm,
And what I discovered was that most of the photography and videography was on the larger scale events was being done by traditional media companies or production companies. And because we had worked with smaller conferences that were more scrappy, and you'll hire a freelancer for pretty much anything.
sure.
you know
Yeah, yeah.
um though some of those marketing directors eventually started to evolve into bigger roles with bigger companies. And they said, you know what? I know a guy that can do this cheaper and better than what we currently have. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Um, and that happened more and more. And for me, I'm a freelancer. All my, I don't. The joy of being a freelancer is that you can you have freedom. It's the ultimate. It's the reason why I left that career in sales or at a company. And that's the same reason everyone else around me, the other freelancers, do that.
Yeah.
So my goal was, let's not force everyone to join this agency. Let's just keep it. We're all freelancers. You all have your own companies, but let's just join up under one umbrella. Just for the time being. It wasn't even called anything yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so I'm still, and then eventually becomes Big Event Media. We're all wearing the t-shirts. We're all wearing, the branding, and we love being a cohesive team. We have so much fun together. It's like we miss each other when we're gone, but it only exists in that moment. And then, we do our own companies. I'm always with Big Event Media.
Mm,
So I think it like really shakes up the structure of what it means to be like a production company. And for me, I think I'm going to maintain this for now, at least, just a all freelancers, amoeba of just moving in and out, and
mm,
but all under the same brand and um, mission and values. And
sure.
it keeps it lean. It keeps it, the keeps costs low, no overhead. Everyone
Move
comes in with their own
fast.
gear, super
Move fast.
fast,
Yeah.
and
Move
the
fast.
talent
React quickly.
is really high. I can hire someone of my equivalent who's a better photographer than me, a better filmmaker than me, and we work together. So the talent level, I think, is also like the best part of that,
When you,
because
I
you're
was
not
just
going to get these guys to work for you as a company.
No, absolutely. No, I mean, especially in today's day and age, the complications of running companies and employing staff. Certainly over here in the UK and in Europe, the legalities of doing that, the administration, the cost, everything that goes with it, the insurances. We live
Right.
in a world now, and they've called it the gig economy over here for a number of years now. I'm sure the same term is used over in the USA, and not just in what you would call traditional freelance, industries like events, like photography, media, etc., like that. But you just look at Uber, you just look at the delivery options that are available now for food, for clothing, for Amazon, whatever it is. We live in a world now that's dominated in some respects by the gig economy, by people who work for themselves, who choose their own hours, who choose when to work, and that ultimately has shaped lots and lots of different things. Media, photography, videography being, a prime example, I think, and long may it continue in some respects, because it's opened up so many other possibilities and doors, I think, that were previously hindered by the notion that you had to run a company and have staff to be big in business or be successful.
Yeah, and I feel that pressure sometimes. I'm like, am I supposed to create a, am I supposed to hire people full time? And there are situations where I feel like that might be a good idea, or especially on the post production. But yeah, the freelance part of it also, there's a reputation. Each person is representing themselves. There's a reputation to uphold individually. So I feel like the work ethic is much higher on the freelance side. And
Yeah.
when I look at my own business, I'm like, everyone I hire is a freelancer or a contractor in some way, built by other freelancers. So, I might work with like an accounting firm, and they might also be contracting out a lot of freelancers. So it's just like this weird web of gig workers. I love it.
When before we wrap up today, when you kind of take a moment to think back to being on the streets of New York, experimenting with a camera, and just taking photos, visiting those neighborhoods, and undoubtedly getting that buzz, and looking at the photos that you've taken and thinking, wow, that one is great, or how can I improve on that? You fast forward to today, do you still get that same buzz? Are you still looking for that same, I guess, artistic input in what you're doing, even when you're having to consider, I guess, the mundane element of earning a living? We've all got to survive. So you've got to take the contract, you've got to take the client on, you've got to take the gig. Do you still get that same buzz as you did when you were walking the streets of New York?
There have been ups and downs for sure. There was a time where I almost was like, God, I'm not going to do this anymore. I can't,
Mhm.
maybe I was burnt out. Um, and the cure for that I found was the agency, working with teams, building up people that are just starting out. As a couple of the team members are still, one of them is still bartending, and the more work I give them, the more likely they are to jump ship and join the freelance brigade. And that gives me a ton of excitement, and there's this feeling of connection and curiosity, and that now I get to relive through them, but also together, just as a team, we just have too much fun. I mean, we're always laughing and smiling and joking around, and then at the same time creating really high quality work that we're all really proud of. We kind of just boost each other up and get that excitement going. But that original feeling is like a connection with a stranger. So if you're a street photographer or a travel photographer or a concert photographer, for me, there's a connection that I'm making with the subject, the person. I'm often really close to people when I shoot. On the at National Geographic, one of my friends shoots for them. He connects with nature and animals in that way, and there's this. It allows us to get close,
Yeah.
and events are the just this very concentrated version of that. I don't
Yeah.
have to walk so far to meet 1,000 people that are are open to me, like photographing them, and there's just something beautiful about it. Even the most basic subject, an audience member looking in the light, and I say, "Oh man, great shot, Michael. That's amazing. Like the lighting is so good," and we all we all get excited about something that probably is pretty boring to most people.
And it's, well,
But Yeah.
It's been great talking to you about it today, because it's a bit of a subject shift for the podcast. I can't recall that we've really dived or delved into the world of event photography and videography, and have spoken to somebody, I guess, at a personal level, to find out how they're doing it. So it's very much appreciated that you've taken a bit of time out to have this conversation with us today. And but before we sort of say goodbye to everybody, if people want to go and check out your work, find out more about Big Event Media, where can you direct them? Where's the best place to find you?
Sure. They can go to our website, bigevent.media, or find us on Instagram. You can see all of our fun BTS at Big Event Media.
Fantastic. Well, we really appreciate it. Our guest today on the podcast has been Vincent Roazzi Jr., the founder of Big Event Media. It's been great to speak to you today, Vincent. Before we wrap up today's episode of the podcast, don't forget, if you are listening to the podcast today on your podcast platform, please do make sure that after you finish today's episode, you head over to eventindustrynews.com on whatever device is accessible to you, and check out the latest news, features, special supplements, all available on the Event Industry News website, along, of course, with the A to Z supplier directory. If you are looking for a product or a service for your event, chances are you will find it on the A to Z supplier directory over on eventindustrynews.com, where you can also find video versions of all of our podcasts. Of course, you may have started your journey there today and been watching the video version of today's podcast on that very website. Thank you very much for doing so. If that's where you've started, please don't forget to go in that opposite direction and make sure that you find the Event Industry News podcast on your podcast platform and hit the subscribe button. Thanks very much again to Vincent for joining me today, and we will see you all on the next edition of the Event Industry News podcast. Thanks very much, everybody, and goodbye.